I was part of negotiating purchasing of a mosque on 172nd Street in the Bronx. Right across from that building, there was a Christian church. And I said to the Imam there day one, I said, we need to go across the street and introduce ourselves to them and see how we can work together.
I know what it's like to be discounted or to be disregarded. And so I work every day to make sure that we're creating environments where people do feel included and do feel like they are empowered and that they have a contribution to make and that contribution is valued.
When I go to the soup kitchen in White Plains and see the men there that I've seen years in a row, and they acknowledge the fact that I'm back again and that they enjoy the meal that we prepare, that blows me away.
Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody.
My name is Mohamed Shaffieq Chace. I'm an Imam for New Rochelle Mosque last 6 years. As my profession, I'm a medical director for Mercy Diagnostics Inc. for the past 20 years. I was born in South America in a little village about 5 miles from the capital of Georgetown. My grandparents came from India, brought by the British to work on the plantation as indentured laborers. Whatever Islam they came with, that's what they established. So my grandfather was probably first generation in South America who has established Islam. I grew up in a very poor family. I remember I used to walk to the mosque in mud. And when I get to the mosque, I would have to wash my feet. Most of my early Islamic education was in South America until I was 14 years old. I came into this country the 31st of August, 1983, with my mom, single parent, and 4 children. We grew up in the Bronx, went to Evander Childs High School. After 2 years, I was honored as the most creative student in New York City. I was given the Haney and Cagney Medal from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which was only given to a few people. I was in high school when they started the first Islamic school in the Bronx, which is called Islamic Elementary School. It's one of the most successful schools now in the tri-state area. It's called Al-Ihsan Islamic Academy. On weekends, I would volunteer to go pick up kids from the inner city to bring them to this little one-family house in the South Bronx, where we would try to tutor them in math and English and give them some Islamic education also. I did a business degree and became a broker for GKN Securities. But shortly after that, I realized that that's not a good profession for me, and I went into the medical field thereafter. Even though I went into the medical field, I always have this calling. This is what gives me gratification and a perspective in life.
My name is Mecca Santana. I'm the Senior Vice President for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement for WMC Health Network. I was born and raised in upstate New York, Syracuse. I came down to this region to go to Hofstra Law School, and after that embarked on a career as a criminal prosecutor in Manhattan. I enjoyed that work tremendously and only left to become senior counsel for the New York State Commission of Investigation, where I was part of a group of both lawyers and law enforcement that dealt with assorted criminal matters throughout the state of New York. I left that to take a position as the executive director for the New York City Department of Education's Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity Management. It was what I enjoyed more so than being an attorney, more so than practicing, was I enjoyed being an advocate. And so whether I was an advocate for crime victims or in that role, an advocate for students and for workers who needed to make sure they had equity and access, I enjoyed doing that work. And it was that work and those accomplishments that ultimately brought me to the attention of Governor Andrew Cuomo, and I was appointed as New York State's Chief Diversity Officer. It was a very high-profile position. I got to travel, I got to present to the United Nations, and while the professional realm has changed from law enforcement to education to government to healthcare, the work has not. The work is still about increased opportunities, increased access, equalizing the playing field, being passionate about issues that matter to other people.
My name is Leroy. I'm the Director of Social Action at Temple Shaaray Tefila, and otherwise a retired former hospital administrator and commercial real estate broker. I was born in New York City. I lived in the outer boroughs, Queens and the Bronx. Lower middle class background, 5 people in a 2-bedroom garden apartment walk-up. I went through the New York City school system, and then I went to State University of New York at Binghamton. I went to graduate school at Columbia University School of Public Health to become a hospital administrator. I spent 5 years doing hospital administration at Bronx Municipal Hospital Center and at Mount Sinai Medical Center. One place I ran the Department of Mental Health Services, that was at Bronx Municipal. A huge position for such a young person. And then I wanted to sample a private hospital, so I ran the operating rooms and the Department of Anesthesiology at Mount Sinai Medical Center. After that, I went into commercial real estate. So I went from a salaried position to one where I put myself on the line every day, had to make things happen. I did that for 26 years, ran a small brokerage, so I think I was successful at that, and I think I carried that putting myself out on the line every day into what I do today.
I've been the Imam here since 2012 when we purchased this mosque in New Rochelle, the Islamic Center of New Rochelle. Most of what we are proud of here is that we're involved in the community in terms of, like, we give out a lot of backpacks to the poor in the area every school year. We have a great relationship with the police department into supporting their program. Just recently, Sandy, we provided 3,000 hot meals. You know, just a few of us come together and cook these meals and distribute it to the poor. My greatest accomplishment in this community is to speak out against the injustice that we saw in Sri Lanka at the United Nations. We went again last year to speak against what's happening in Burma. What we find is that most of the mosques in the tri-state area, up until probably 7-8 years ago, you would find that people would come and they would establish a mosque and they would just go there and pray and go back to their home and stay within their culture. I started a foundation called Global Ummah Foundation. The premise of that foundation is to bring people of different faith together.
As the Senior Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion and Community Engagement, I really get to wear two hats. The first being that I make sure that all of our internal policy making is really centered around diversity and inclusion best practices. The other hat, which is equally rewarding, is the community engagement hat. And that's all about making sure that the various diverse communities we serve are empowered, that they have access to the best care, that we're being responsive with regard to our service to those communities, that our internal decision making is informed by the voice of our external stakeholder partners. We can't create health and wellness just within our own four walls. It really requires the dedicated collaboration from external community partners, and one of those being the faith-based community. We do a tremendous amount of work, whether it's going into the various mosque, synagogue, a church, to do healthy cooking, diet and nutrition, mental health, mental wellness. What I'm most proud of are really the opportunities that I've had to create opportunities for other people. One is the work we do with the Greater New York Hospital Association, and it's called our Summer Experience Fellowship Program. This is a fellowship program that's designed to take graduate students and undergraduate students from underrepresented groups and really try to bring them into healthcare leadership and expose them to healthcare leadership. So often young people think that the idea of being in healthcare means I have to be a doctor or a nurse. And so exposing these young people, several of whom we have actually employed in our system, is a pipeline to get more diversity into healthcare administration.
My family calls me the busiest retired person they know. I work at the temple almost every day. We have so many projects. We affect so many lives. We work with so many different organizations. Some of the activities we do starts with Thanksgiving. Last year we fed 2,800 people in Westchester County and the Bronx. We reach out to anybody and everybody who needs food, and we cook for a week 5 days in advance. We touch all sorts of groups when we feed people. We feed homeless people, we feed people in shelters, women's shelters, people of all race, religions. At Christmas, last year we made 1,400 Christmas meals for those in need. We can do this because it's not our holiday, so we're glad to help people who might not have for their holiday. My children run the floor operations during our Thanksgiving programs and our Christmas programs. So they have to advise 300 to 500 volunteers at Thanksgiving or Christmas on what to do, where to do it, when to do it, how to do it. We host a Seder with WJCS, and we have about 100 people with developmental disabilities, and we run a typical Passover Seder for them, and it's a beautiful experience. We grow a vegetable garden right here on the grounds of Temple Shaaray Tefila, where we provide fresh vegetables for food kitchens in the county. We house the homeless in the winter. In our facility, we feed them dinner, breakfast, bag lunch. They come for a week. We perform midnight runs in New York City throughout the year. All told, we led 9 trips to Puerto Rico during hurricane relief. I'm extremely proud of that work. These people in this community didn't have power for 9 months. Can you imagine 9 months in your community not having power? If I can create the infrastructure, they are then happy to do it. Because when they come and when they're working, they are really happy. And when they leave, they tell other people. And we just create community. And that might be my greatest accomplishment or my most favorite accomplishment, creating community.
My grandfather, Abdul Hamid Khan, he was probably the Grand Imam for most of the countries in South America. He traveled in the 1940s to 5 different countries. His sons, they became Imams after him, and it's just a natural progression of things that I'm here. Many places that I would visit in United States or Canada, people would come up and ask you where you're from, and many of the older folks say they know my grandfather, so he has touched many people. Growing up, there was no mix between Hindu and Muslim. And knowing that my grandfather was ahead of his time, where he would sit and listen to their sermon and even give lectures at their sermon, I think that's what inspired me in terms of the pluralistic position in terms of interfaith work. My wife, as a matter of fact, she's from a Hindu family. And one of the greatest accomplishments that I have accomplished in my life is to marry against all the odds and fought on both sides.
I've had many role models along the way, starting with the personal, of course, my parents. My mother was a teacher. She was also someone who, from the time that my siblings and I were very young, was always about standing up and doing the right thing, speaking out, being a voice for change, even at times when it was difficult. And I think we need more voices like that. It really has helped me in my pursuits in being someone who stands up and speaks out against injustice. I've also had tremendous role models in my professional realms. I've had people who really helped stoke my passion, my purpose, whether it was my time at the DA's office or my time at the New York City Department of Education or my time in the governor's office, working for a governor who was very much about equity and increased access.
My role models are people like Gary Cohn, who is the most selfless person I know, a gentleman named Art Bonagora, who runs the soup kitchen at St. Bartholomew's Church in White Plains, where we cook meals for their pantry, their food kitchen. People like Stanley Bergman. He, along with Farouk Kathwari, started the Muslim Jewish Advisory Council.
I remember a famous quote that Jesus, peace be upon him, he was walking with his disciples, and his disciples brought his attention and says, "Oh Isa, oh Jesus, look how mangy looking those dogs are, that their skins are oozing with pus." And then he turned to them and he says, "But look how white the tooth of the dog is." And I always look for that white tooth in every human being. Look at every human being with compassion, not contempt.
I was not what people expected when it came to who was in charge, who was making the decisions. On more than one occasion, I've been mistaken for an administrative assistant. On more than one occasion, especially when I was a prosecutor down in Manhattan, I was mistaken for a criminal defendant when walking into court instead of the attorney on the case. And so those were very difficult things that I had to overcome. But my ability to persevere really helped me when it comes to my choice to be an advocate for others, to try to do the most that I can to create opportunities, try to equalize the playing field, to ensure that people have an equitable chance to compete and to succeed. And I really spent a life in that space.
I practice my Judaism through Tikkun Olam, the principle of repairing the world, just a little bit. I love helping people. I love reaching out to people of all faiths, of all genders, of all races, creeds, and colors.
It's not only in times of like the diversity breakfast that we come and we have a great time and we meet each other and we honor each other. We should be there in times of difficulties for each other. When this situation happened in New Zealand, some of the greatest support we got was from the Jewish temple and the Christian churches. As a matter of fact, there was a family from New Zealand came and stand in front of the door and told the congregants, "You just come in and pray, we will protect you." I was invited to give the Martin Luther King sermon in the Baptist church in Bedford. And I think that's a beautiful thing when we can all worship together. I remember I taking my daughters to that Baptist church event. They were like so amazed of the energy that these people worship in. And I said, this is something that we need to see. And the only way we will see this is that we have to open these doors, open the doors of worship to each other. People from within our community called me and they object to me going to churches and give sermon or these relationships. Those same people that were against the work that I was doing 5-7 years ago after what happened in the synagogue and after what happened in the mosque, those are the same people come and tell me, "Imam, sorry that this is a good thing." They're coming from predominantly Muslim countries. So they never see the need to interact with other faith. And this is something that we're really working hard towards.
There's a tendency sometimes to see what's wrong, but not to call out what's wrong, to not get involved, to say to ourselves, well, it's not directly impacting me. And so there's not a need for me to insert myself. We all have an obligation to insert ourselves when we see something that is so patently offensive, that is so discriminatory in nature. Because as a society, that's the collective compact that we have with each other. That I can, even though you look nothing like me, even though you sound nothing like me, even though you don't come from the same place that I come from, there's a sense of commonality and humanity that exists between us. And so if I can't stand up and fight for that when you're impacted, who's going to stand up and fight for that when I'm impacted?
I believe in the golden rule. Do unto others as others would do unto you. There may not be a more important principle in my work.
Diversity is important. If you can bring the faith together, it's a very powerful force if we can come together. And when we see a hate against a Christian, everyone should speak up against that hate. Muslims and Jews and Christians as well.
Diversity is so important to me because we can't be living in enclaves just amongst ourselves in communities that might be comfortable, might have more than others. We have to reach out beyond our walls to help those who are less fortunate.
Diversity and inclusion and engagement are all about valuing people for their uniqueness. It's not about trying to get everyone to fit in. It's not about trying to get everyone to assimilate. It's saying, I see you and I value you for all that you bring to the table, and that's what makes us stronger, better, more efficient, more effective in regard to our business. Embracing diversity and valuing diversity as part of your strategic business imperatives will help you drive success in your organization. You don't drive innovation by having everyone with the same ideas. You drive innovation by having everyone bring their whole self to the table, and there's a robust dialogue and a robust exchange of information and ideas, and from that you get the very best. It's not a zero-sum game. I can appreciate what's beautiful about you. I can disagree with what is your particular belief or practice and still respect and value your right to believe and practice as you do. That's all about diversity. That's all about inclusion. You have no idea how many conversations I have with people who will say, oh, but Mecca, for me to embrace the LGBT community, well, I don't believe in what I said, well, it's not about you believing it. That's okay. You can come from a background that says you don't believe in gay marriage. Does that mean you can't offer high quality healthcare services to a member of the LGBT community? They're not mutually exclusive. You're not sacrificing anything. Understanding and being sensitive towards this community just means that you're more equipped to offer the best clinical services.
I've traveled all over this country. I haven't seen this type of interfaith relationship, the richness of the relationship, breaking down these barriers in terms of creating a pluralistic society. And I think we really need to continue this work to be a model probably for the rest of the country, and who knows, for the global issues that's happening across the world.
Westchester is one of those areas that is tremendously diverse from a socioeconomic standpoint, from a faith standpoint, from a national origin and race and ethnicity standpoint. Westchester really runs the gamut. It is like no other place that I have had the benefit of working in. And for me, that just creates ripe opportunity to leverage that diversity to do the work that I do every day.
The situation that's happening globally in terms of what's happening outside of this country, we have no control over it. What we have control of is that Almighty God put me in New Rochelle and put Scott in AJC. And I think we're here for a purpose. Let's work on making a difference here. And by that work, I think, by the mercy, and if our intention is sincere, it will affect those situations. We pray that it affect those situations globally.
At the end of my days, I want to be sitting on a beach somewhere, looking back at the contributions I've made for others. Not for my own family, not for my own children. I think it's an easy thing to be a hero to your own family. It's a difficult thing to go out and be a hero to someone else. And so I measure my life, I measure my success by how much benefit I brought to others.
When I have a person come here during Thanksgiving to pick up food, who's standing around wanting to help, who's worked for the last 40 years, never sat down, never been served. And I tell them, it's your turn to sit down. It's your turn to be served. There's no greater feeling.